We're learning today that the Gemara on Daf Beis Amud Beis towards the bottom of the Yamud, where it says Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira Omer, first wide line. So the Gemara and the Braisa brought a few opinions regarding when you start saying Mashav Ruach HaMered HaGeshem. So according to Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira, you begin on the second day of Sukkot. So the Gemara brings the reason for this. Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira Omer b'Sheni b'Chag u'Masker. On the second day of Sukkot is when you begin saying Mashav Ruach HaMered HaGeshem. My time. What's the reason Dafka on the second day of Sukkot? My time to Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira. Tanya, because we learned in our Braisa as follows. And here Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira brings the source for Nisach HaMayim, the pouring of the water on the Mizbeach on Sukkot. Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira Imer Nemar B'Sheni. When it says in the second day regarding the Karbonis, it says V'niskei hem. It says the term Niskei hem. Usually on most of the days of Sukkot by the Karbonis it says V'niska. But if here on the second day it says v'niskei hem, so we have this extra mem over here, and v'nema b'shishi v'unisachecha. Then on the sixth day it says unisachecha instead of v'niska it says v'nisachecha, so you have an extra yud over here. And then v'nema b'shvi on the second day it says kimishpatam. It doesn't say kamishpat, it says kimishpatam, an extra mem. Harei mem yud mem. So this is a extra mem and a yud and a mem. So harei kan mayim. This hints to the water. So this is a remes for the fact that you pour water on the Mizbeach and Sukkot min HaTorah. So why is it that you begin saying Mashav Ruach HaMered HaGeshem on the second day? Because which is the day, the first day that you see the hint for this mitzvah of Misach HaMayim, it's on the second day of Sukkot when it says V'niskeyem. So therefore, as we'll see soon in the Gemara, according to Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira, they actually began Nisach HaMayim only on the second day. And you begin saying Mashav Ruach HaMered HaGeshem, which is related to Nisach HaMayim, also only on the second day of Sukkot. So Hilkach B'Sheni Matkirina. The second day is when you mention the rain. This is Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira. Now we had before in the Braisa Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva B'Shishi B'Chag u'Masker. That on the sixth day of Sukkot is when you mention the rain. So why on the sixth day? Shenemar b'shishi unisachecha. So according to Rabbi Akiva, it's because on the sixth day it says unisachecha. What do you learn from unisachecha? So according to him, the remes for Nisach HaMayim is not from the mem yud mem like Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira learned it out, but he learns it just from what it says on the sixth day unisachecha. Unisachecha is a plural term. V'shnei nisuche nakasav medaber. The Torah is speaking about pouring on the Mizbeach twice. Echad nisach hamayim, once you pour water, and ve'echad nisach hayayin, and once you pour wine. So the Gemara asks on this, ve'emet tarvaya dechamra. Maybe you should pour twice wine. How do you know when it says a double lashon or it says a plural lashon nisachel? How do you know that it means to pour once water and once wine? So the Gemara says, Savala Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira, the Amar remizi maya. He does hold like Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira that there is a remes for the water because you have the mem, the yud, and the mem. So that's how we know that it's water. So the Gemara asks, but Isavala Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira, if he agrees to Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira that the remes is the mem, yud, and the mem, if so, neimikavasei. So you should say like Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira. In other words, what the Gemara is saying over here is, Rabbi Akiva is learning out the mitzvah of Nisach HaMayim only from the Nesachecha that it says on the sixth day. And that's the reason why Rabbi Akiva says that you only begin saying Mashav Ruach HaMered HaGeshem on the sixth day. And as the Gemara will soon say, that according to Rabbi Akiva, the actual Nisach HaMayim was also only on the sixth day. But the Gemara asks, the only way Rabbi Akiva will know that it's water is because he also agrees to Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira that you learn it from the Mem and the Yud and the Mem. So why doesn't he say, like Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira, that you start on the second day? So the Gemara says, Kasava Rabbi Akiva holds, Ki ksiv nisach yiseira b'shishi yud chsiv. The time where you have an extra nisach, that the Torah shows that you're pouring extra, is only by nisachecha. So Rashi explains that when the Torah says niskei hem, even though niskei hem is a plural term, there's no remes for that there's an extra nisach. And the reason is because in that pasuk where it says in niskei hem, it's talking about more than one carbon there. In the pasuk over there it says Si'irizim echad chatos, mulvad doilas atomid, umechasav, and niskeihem. So because it's talking about more than one carbon, so niskeihem is going on two karbanis. So it's not an extra nisachim. Ashi in the bottom of the Yomad explains this. Whereas in the pasuk unisachecha, so in that pasuk it's only talking about one carbon. It says Seir chatos echad Over there it says Milvado as a Talmud Muchasa Nisacheha. So over here it's because it's only talking about one carbon and it says Nisacheha. So on that he says that it's going on two different Nisachim that you pour. It goes on the Nisachayayin and the Nisachamayim. The only way that you know, though, that it's talking about water is also because of the remez of the mem, yud, and the mem that Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira said.
So on the shishi was 2 times Nisach?
Again? Yeah, according to Rabbi Akiva, on the 6th day and on the 7th day is when they poured Nisach HaMayim, but not on the rest of Sukkot. So the Gemara, Tanya, huh? And the Chanami, but the Nisach HaMayim, according to Rabbi Akiva, began only on the 6th day. We'll see soon in the Gemara. Tanya Rab Nasan Naimer. Rab Nasan brings another source for the Nisach HaMayim in the Beis HaMikdash and Sukkot. It says in the pasuk, this is actually a pasuk regarding the carbon Talmud B'chlal. Ba'kodesh haseich nesach sheichel Hashem. So the pasuk uses a double term over here, haseich and nesach. B'shnei nisuchin hakasav medaber. The Torah is speaking about pouring twice. Echad nisach hamayim ve'echad nisach hayayin. Once it's talking about water, and the other time it's talking about wine. Even though this is not a pasuk that talks about sukkahs. So how do we know it talks about sukkahs? There's a few different pshatim. One pshat I saw, it says, because haseich is also the same letters as sukkah. So that's how we know it goes on sukkahs. Okay? But the Gemara asks in this, Eimet tarvayu dechamre. Maybe when it says haseich and nesach, a double lashon, it's saying that you should pour wine twice. And kain lichtiv kra oy haseich haseich. If it's the same thing that you're pouring, so it should repeat haseich haseich, or nesach nesach, it should repeat the same word nesach nesach. My haseich and nesach. Why does it say haseich and nesach, two different words? Shamit mino, the reason the Torah switches the language, chadamaya, one time it's saying to pour water, v'chadachamra, and one time it's saying to pour wine. This is a pasuk that it says by the carbon Talmud Shel Shachar. Yeah, but nevertheless, it's a remez only b'negei to sukkahs. But from the fact that we learn it from this pasuk, which it says it by the Talmud Shel Shachar, we know that the mitzvah of Nisach HaMayim is only by the Talmud Shel Shachar. By the Talmud Shel Bein Arbayim, they only poured wine, no Nisach HaMayim. So the Gemara Ela Haditnan. Now this that it says in the Mishnah in Masechta Sukkah, Nisach HaMayim Kol Zayin, that you pour the water on the Mizbeach all 7 days of Sukkahs. Samani, according to whose opinion does this go? Rabbi Yeshua, does this follow Rabbi Yeshua's opinion? What did Rabbi Yeshua say? When do you start saying Mashav Ruach HaMoyer Dageshem? On Shmini Atzeres. So Neime, Chad Yoime, you should say that you pour the water only one day. Right? The Gemara assumes here that the day that you say Mashav Ruach HaMoyer Dageshem is related to the day that you pour the water on the Mizbeach. So according to Rabbi Yeshua that you say it in Shmini Atzeres, so then that's only one day, that's when you pour the water, just that day, not the 7 days. If it's Rabbi Akiva, so today Yom, so then it's just 2 days, because Rabbi Akiva says that you start on the 6th day, the 6th and the 7th day. Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira, and if it's according to Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira's opinion, Shita Yomi. So he says you start on the 2nd day of Sukkot, so you only have 6 days that you pour the water. So where do you have 7 days? So the Gemara answers, La'olam, Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira. I can tell you really that Mishnah that says you pour 7 days is Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira, and you start on the 2nd day of Sukkot. Usvirelei Rabbi Yehuda de Masnissen. He holds like Rabbi Yehuda of the Mishnah that says that you pour the Nisach HaMayim on Shmini Atzeres as well. The Tanan in the Mishnah it said, Rabbi Yehuda beloiga yimenasech kol shmeina. Rabbi Yehuda says that you pour the Nisach HaMayim all 8 days. You start on the 1st day and you pour even on the 8th day on Shmini Atzeres. So therefore, according to Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira, we can say umapik rishin. You take out the 1st day. You don't pour the Nisach HaMayim on the 1st day, but umayel shmini. But you do pour on the 8th day. Right? So therefore, according to Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira, you have 7 days. And that's the Tana of the Mishnah that said 7 days. So the Gemara, no, this doesn't make sense. Why aren't you pouring the water on the 1st day? Because the remes for the water begins in the lashon of the pasuk on the 2nd day, where it says Meneskeyem. So if so, Shmini Nami Kirimizi Mayim B'Shvi Derimizi. So the same thing also regarding the 8 days. How could you say that you pour the water on the 8 days if the remes for the water is only in the 7 days of Sukkot and there's no remes for pouring water on the 8th day of Shmini Atzeres? So it doesn't make any sense to say that according to Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira, you would pour the water on Shmini Atzeres. So therefore the Gemara switches and says, Ela Rab Yeshuahi. Really, the one that says that you pour 7 days is Rabbi Yeshua. According to Rabbi Yeshua, you only begin mentioning Mashav Ruach HaMered Geshem on Shmini Atzeres. So according to him, you're not pouring the water on the entire Sukkos. So the Gemara says, Nisach HaMayim Kol Shiva Hilchase Gemirila. The truth is, according to Rabbi Yeshua, this that you pour water on the 7 days of Sukkot, it's not based on the hint and the lashon of the pasuk, whether it's the 2nd day or the 6th day and so on. It's a halacha l'moshe misina that we learn it out. The Gemara brings the source of this: the Omer Abami, Omer Rab Yechanan, Mishum Rab Nechunya, Ish Bikas Beis Chursan. That are 3 halachas that were taught together as a halacha l'moshe misinai. One is Esen Etiyas, the halacha of Shemitah. The halacha regarding Shemitah is that the month before Shemitah is Tosfos Shemitah. You have to add a month to Shemitah, just like you have the Tosfos Shabbos. You have to also add a month before Shemitah that you're not allowed to work in the field. However, there's a halacha l'moshe misinai of Esen Etiyas. If you have a field that has, it's a size of a base saw, and it has 10 young trees that are spread out in this field, so you're allowed to work with them even in that month before Shemitah. And the reason is because if you don't, they're going to die. Yeah, that you need to constantly work with them and give them water and so on. So there's halacha l'moshe misinai that even in that month before Shemitah, you're allowed to do the work in the field over there. That's one halacha l'moshe misinai. Then the halacha l'moshe misinai of Arava. The Arava in the Beis HaMikdash that they used to bring on a Shana Rabbah and go around the Mizbech with it. And Nisach HaMayim, and the water that you pour on the Mizbeach, halacha l'moshe misinai. This is all a halacha l'moshe misinai. So 2 points over here. First of all, Rashi points out that the Gemara was trying to figure out who is the Tana that says that Nisach HaMayim is 7 days. So Rashi says the emes is the Gemara could have simply said that this is Rabbi Eliezer, because Rabbi Eliezer is the one that said that you begin saying Mashav Ruach HaMered Geshem from the first day of Sukkot. Even though it said before that it's related to Lulav, but nevertheless, if you start saying Mashav Ruach HaMered Geshem from the first day, so you could say that according to Rabbi Eliezer, they also poured the water on the Mizbeach from the first day of Sukkot. Elamai, Rashi says that the Gemara knew, but nevertheless, the Gemara was trying to figure out if this Mishnah that says that you pour the water 7 days on the Mizbeach could go like any of the other Tanaim besides Rabbi Eliezer. That's one point. Another point here is, when the Gemara concludes that Nisach HaMayim is halacha l'moshe misinai, so in the simple pshat of the Gemara, it seems that the other Tanaim learned it out from the pasuk, whether the Mem Yud Mem, or whether the Nisachel, or whether the Haseich Nesech. It's only according to Rabbi Yeshua that the Gemara is concluding that it's halacha l'moshe misinai. But lav dafke. The Sfas Emes says that according to the conclusion of the Gemara that it says that it's halacha l'moshe misinai, l'kula alma, the Nisach HaMayim is halacha l'moshe misinai. There are the Ramazim of the pasuk, but everybody agrees that be'emes that Nisach HaMayim is halacha l'moshe misinai, and therefore the time when they began is not related to the drasha of the pasuk. According to everybody, you could say that they began already from the first day of Sukkot.
So what's the connection between Nisach HaMayim and being maskir?
The Gemara assumes that the time when you learn in the pasuk.
It's an assumption. It doesn't
Chanami.
We don't have any.
Correct. But the Gemara assumes this, that the time in the pasuk when it says the drasha of where the where the water was poured on the Mizbeach, that's the time when you start pouring the water on the Mizbeach, and that's also the time when you start saying Mashav Ruach HaMered Geshem. Yeah. Zok the Gemara, Rabbi Yehuda says, Mishum Rabbi Yeshua. This is a quote from the Braise that we had before. That Rabbi Yehuda said in the name of Rabbi Yeshua, the one that davens for the Yomid on the last day of Sukkot, which is Shmini Atzeres, so ha'achrei masker, the one davening Musaf mentions Mashav Ruach HaMered Geshem, Harishon eina masker, the one davening Shacharis does not. B'Yom Tov Harishon Shel Pesach, it comes the first day of Pesach, Harishon masker, the first one mentions Mashav Ruach HaMered Geshem, ha'achrei eina masker, the one davening Musaf does not. So now, Rabbi Yehuda said this in the name of Rabbi Yeshua. Which Rabbi Yeshua did he say this in the name of? Frak the Gemara. Hi Rabbi Yeshua. Which is the Rabbi Yeshua that he's saying this in his name? Ilay Rabbi Yeshua the Masnisin. Is it the Rabbi Yeshua of our Mishnah that said that on Shmini Atzeres is when you begin saying Mashav Ruach HaMered Geshem? But Ha'amar, he said B'Yom Tov Ha'achron Shel Chag Hu Masker, that you begin saying Mashav Ruach HaMered Geshem on the last day of Sukkot, which is Shmini Atzeres, and it seems from him that even the person davening Shachris already says it. He didn't say that only the one davening Musaf. So Rabbi Yeshua didn't say what Rabbi Yehuda said in his name. Ella Rabbi Yeshua de Braise. So Elamai, what are you going to tell me? Maybe the Rabbi Yeshua, the way it's quoted in the Braise, is different than the Mishnah. So let's see what it says in the Braise. But Ha'amar in the Braise it said Mishas Hanochosai, that when you put down the lulav and you finish doing the mitzvah of lulav, that's when you begin saying Mashav Ruach HaMered Geshem, which means then that according to him you would already start from Ma'ariv. by Ma'ariv time of Shmini Atzeres, you already start saying it. So it's again not what Rabbi Yehuda quoted in his name, that you only start from Musaf time. Now the Gemara says, I have another question for you. Now we have another Braise, which was not quoted before. The Su, the Tanya, this that it says in the Braise, that Rabbi Yehuda Mishum Ben Beseira. Rabbi Yehuda said in the name of Ben Beseira, that when you daven for the Yomid on the last day of Sukkot and Shmini Atzeres, the one davening Musaf says, Mashav Ruach Amir da Geshem, and the one davening Shachris does not. That's what he said in the name of Ben Beseira. So the Gemara wants to know, hi, Ben Beseira. Who's this Ben Beseira? If it's Rabbi Yehuda Ben Beseira, Hakadapi, Ha'ama B'Sheni B'Chagom Maska. We had before in the Braise that Rabbi Yehuda Ben Beseira says, when you begin saying Mashav Ruach Amir da Geshem, on the second day of Sukkot. So we have two different versions here. Either Rabbi Yehuda is speaking in the name of Rabbi Yeshua, or he's speaking in the name of Ben Beseira, and he's saying that you only start saying Mashav Ruach Amir da Geshem by Musaf of Shmini Atzeres, and either way it doesn't fit. It's not what Rabbi Yeshua said, it's not what Rabbi Yehuda Ben Beseira said, so what's going on here? So the Gemara answers...
You have Rabbi Yehuda Ben Beseira and Rabbi Yehuda in the name of Ben Beseira.
Correct.
People, no?
Correct, yes. So the Gemara answers both questions with one point. Amar Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak, so Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak says, Tehei, or the Bach over here adds, Tehei Tarvayu, you can explain both of these statements of Rabbi Yehuda that he's speaking about one person. But Rabbi Yeshua ben Beseira. It's not the regular Rabbi Yeshua, and it's not Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira. Who is it? It's Rabbi Yeshua ben Beseira. And he's a third person. And he's the one that said that you start saying it by Musaf and Shmini Atzeres. And the Gemara explains, Zimnin the Karilei B'Shmei. Sometimes they refer to him with his name as Rabbi Yeshua, and the Zimnin the Karilei B'Shmei Daba. And sometimes he was referred to as just Ben Beseira, just with the name of his father. And what's the difference? Before he got smicha, so he didn't have that prominence to be called Rabbi Yeshua, so they just called him Ben Beseira. And then after he got smicha, so then they referred to him as Rabbi Yeshua. But it's really one person, Rabbi Yeshua ben Beseira. Zog the Gemara, Tane, we learned in the Braise, Betal uberuchos, regarding the dew and regarding the winds, Lechayvo Chachamim lahasker. Chachamim did not obligate you to mention this in davening. But Vimbala hasker, if you want to mention it, masker, you mention it. In other words, this that we say today, Mashav Ruach, it's not something that you're obligated to mention. Or when we say Meire Datal, in the summer we say Meire Datal, it's also you're not obligated to mention this. My time, what's the reason that there's no obligation to mention this? Amar Rab Chanina, so said Rab Chanina explains, because this is something that never stops. There's always dew and there's always wind in the world. Now, with rain, which is something that's seasonal and it comes in certain times when you need it, and there's a judgment for that, whether it's going to come and how much it will come. So that's something we want to mention in order to appease the Eibishter, to praise the Eibishter about this, that the rain should come. But regarding the winds and the dew, which is always there, so that's not something that we have to mention at all. It's not going to stop ever. Minalon.
So it's not for rain?
Mashav Ruach Amayre da Geshem. No. We're talking about Amayre da Geshem. But the Mashav Ruach, there's no obligation to mention. That's what the Gemara here is saying. Right? Rashi here says, if you look at the bottom of Rashi, but Rashi says this that we say Mashav Ruach Amayre da Geshem today. So really, there's the inyan of wind for itself. And then there's Mashav Ruach that comes together with the rain. So when we say today Mashav Ruach, it's different because that Mashav Ruach goes together with the rain. But the Gemara is talking here about the wind itself and the inyan of dew for itself. That's something that you don't have to mention separately because it's something that's always here. Minal and delay matzah, from where do we see that this is never something that stops? He said to Achav that Chai Hashem Elokei Yisrael shamarti lefanov im yiyah hashanim ha'ele talamata, that he made a shvuah, he swore that there will be no dew and no rain in this time period. Ki im lefi dvari, only according to what I say, when I say that it will come dew and rain. That's what he said lechatchila. But then then later what does it say? Leich heral Achav etna matra pnei adam. The Eibusha says, go show Achav. It was after a few years that it did not rain, and the Eibusha says, go tell Achav that now it's going to come rain. But vilu talika amale. It doesn't say that the Eibush is telling him, go tell Achav that it's going to start raining. My time, and why not? Yishom delay metzar, because the dew never gets held up. The dew really came down in all this time period, even in the time when there was the gzeira that it should not rain. Frektim gemara v'chimiacha delay metzar. So if the dew never stops anyways, Eliyahu ishtabui lamali. So then why is Eliyahu swearing that it won't rain and there won't be any dew either? So the Gemara says, Hachi Kamale. This is what he was saying to Achav. Afil tal de brache nami lo yasi. That the tal, even though the dew comes all the time, but sometimes the dew has a positive effect, and it's a bracha, that it helps things grow, and sometimes it does not have that positive effect. Right? So therefore, when he said that there won't be any dew, what he meant to say is there won't be any dew that's a bracha. Fragt the Gemara, so if so, v'lahadre letal de bracha. So then when the Eibusher says that it's going to begin raining again, why don't we say as well that it's going to begin coming down the dew, which will be a bracha now? And says the Gemara, Mishum de leminkere milsa. That's not something that's noticeable. In other words, this is Achav over here. Achav is a Rashi. You're going to come tell Achav after all the time that the dew didn't come down. Now the dew is going to start coming down. Achav is going to say, what do you mean? The dew was here all the time. He's not going to see the difference that before the dew did not bring a bracha, and now the dew did bring a bracha. So therefore, the only thing that the Eibusher says is, go tell Achav that now it's going to begin raining. That's something that even Achav or Rasha will notice and see that it stopped, it did not rain for 3 years, and now it begins raining again. From where do we know that the wind is something that never gets held up? Because the pasuk says, like the four sides of the earth, that's what the simple pshat of the pasuk seems to be. Perasti eschem num Hashem. The Eibusher says, I spread you out, all the Yidden as well. So now, my kamalu, what is the Eibusher saying to the Yidden? If you're going to say that the pshat is like it seems from the simple pshat, that HaKadosh Baruch, that ka'amalu HaKadosh Baruch Hu Yisrael, the Eibusher tells the Yidden, the badre sinchu ba'arba ruchi de alma, that I've spread you out in the four sides of the world. If so, ihachi ke'arba, why does it say like the four sides? Be'arba, I spread you out in the four sides of the world. That's what it should say in the pasuk. So Ella, so rather the way you read this pasuk is hachi ka'amar. This is what the pasuk is saying. Kishem she'i efshel ha'olam b'lo ruchos, just like it's impossible for the world to survive without having a wind constantly blowing. Kach efshel ha'olam b'lo Yisrael. So too, it's impossible for the world to survive without the Yidden being in the world and the Yidden learning Torah, as Rashi here brings the pasuk that it says that you constantly need the Yidden in the world learning Torah. That's what holds up the world. The same, just like the winds, as Rashi here brings, when it comes to the winds, you always have to have some kind of a measure of a wind. If not, it's going to be way too hot and too dense the air. So the Gemara now says, based on this, that what did we say? That the dew and the wind is something that never stops. So Amar Rab Chanina says, Hilkach, so therefore, V'may in the summer, Ama Masha V'ruach, if a person said Masha V'ruach, he mentioned the fact that the Eibusher brings a wind, Ein Machzir Noisei, he doesn't have to daven again, because the wind is something which is constant. So if he said it, so then he doesn't have to daven again. Ama Moired HaGeshem, but if you say Moired HaGeshem in the summer, Machzir Noisei, then he has to daven again, because the rain in the summer, it's not the right time for the rain. As we had before in the Gemara, rain in the summer is a siman klala. Okay, so he has to daven again. B'mais akshamim, if in the winter lo'ama masha v'ruach, he did not mention the wind, also ein machzir noisa, you don't have to daven again. The wind is something that anyways is always here. Lo'ama moired hageshem, but in the winter, if you did not say moired hageshem, machzir noisa, so you do have to daven again. Right? Okay, this is brought in Shulchan Aruch, this whole thing, and the Alter Rebbe says in Shulchan Aruch that if you did not say moired hageshem, but you did say moired atol, you don't have to daven again in the winter. So there's a big difference between the winter and the summer. In the summer, if you forgot and you said Moired HaGeshem, because it's a siman klala then, so therefore you have to daven again. But in the winter, if you said by mistake Moired HaTol instead of Moired HaGeshem, Moired HaTol is not something that's a siman klala in the winter. There's always tal. So therefore you don't have to daven again. V'lo yoid. Not only this, let's say someone comes and says in his davening, the Eibusher takes away wind. Umafriach hatal. The Eibusher takes away the dew. You don't have to daven again because really what he said is worthless. In other words, the wind is anyways going to be there always, and the dew is anyways going to be there. So he said something which is not true, but he doesn't have to daven again because it's what he says is not going to have any effect because it's anyways something that never gets held up. Taneh and Abraisa we learned that there's another detail here. Ba'avim uberuchais, the fact that there are clouds that come in the world and the winds that come, lechayvu chachamim lahaske. The chachamim did not obligate this to be mentioned in davening. V'im ba lahaske masker. If you want to mention the fact that the Eibusher brings clouds or the Eibusher brings winds, you could mention it. My time, what's the reason? Mishum deloi metzri, because the clouds that come and the wind in the world is something that never stops. Fragt the Gemara, v'loi metzri, is it true that the clouds and the winds is something that's always here? What Vatani Rav Yosef says, v'otzar es hashamayim, when we say in Kriya Shema, v'otzar hashamayim, the Eibush will hold up from the heavens. What does this mean? Mina avim and mina ruchos. The Eibush will hold up the clouds or the winds from coming. You say that this means that the Eibush will hold up the clouds or the winds. Maybe it means the Eibush will hold up the rain to come down from the sky. No, so the Gemara says, right afterwards the Pasuk says, and there won't be any rain. So it already says that the Eibush is going to hold up the rain. What does it mean when it says the Eibush is going to hold up from the sky? That's referring to the fact that the Eibush holds up the clouds and the winds. So what do you see in this Braisa? That clouds and winds are things that the Eibush does hold up sometimes. So kashye ruchais haruchais. We have a question regarding winds. Is it something that's always here? Or is it something that the Eibush holds up? And also kashye ovim ovim. There's also a question regarding the clouds. So the Gemara explains it depends. There's different kinds of clouds and there's different kinds of winds. Ovim ovim like kashye, regarding the clouds, there's no question, because ha b'charfi. There are the clouds that come before rain. And that clouds that you see that are before rain, so that's something that never gets held up. Those type of clouds always come. And ha ba'afli. And then there's the clouds that come after the rain. So those are the kinds of clouds that are held up sometimes. And ruchais haruchais like kashya. Regarding the wind, there's also no question. Ha beruach mitzuya. There's the common normal level of wind that there is, that's always here. And ha beruach shayne mitzuya. Then you have a wind that's more than, it's not usual. That kind of wind does get held up. And so now the Gemara asks on this, so this ruach she'einu mitzuya, this wind that comes from time to time and it's not a common wind, so ruach she'einu mitzuya chazya lebeidari. Isn't this kind of a wind something which is very beneficial? It's beneficial for beidari. What's beidari? Beidari is in the threshing house when they have the grain and you have to do the winnowing. You have to separate the peels, the chaff from the kernels. So what do? You throw it up in the ear and the wind blows it away. So when you have a strong wind, it's very beneficial for that. So that's something that the world needs. So the question is, if this ruach she'einu mitzuya is something that's held up, maybe we should daven for this kind of a wind. And it should be mentioned in davening. So the Gemara says, no, efshe benafvasa, that for that wind that you need to be able to do the winnowing, you don't need such a strong wind necessarily. The regular level of wind will also be enough to blow away the schmutz that you have over there from the grains. Tane, now in a Braisa we learned, explains more now about the clouds and the winds that we said that come after the rain, and the clouds that come after the rain, and the ruchais that are beneficial. Shniyais lamatar. These are secondary to rain. When Gemara says secondary, what that means is, we know what the benefit of rain is. The benefit of the clouds and the wind are also very beneficial, similar to rain. They're secondary to rain. Heichi dami. So what does this mean? How is it beneficial? Amar Olavi Taimer Rabbi Yehuda. So Rabbi Yehuda, so he said, Rabbi Yehuda said, the basar mitra lemitra. The basar mitra. We're talking over here both about the clouds or the winds that come after the rain. They are very beneficial for the world. So dafka the ones that come afterwards, not the ones that come before. So the Gemara says, Lememre de mal yusihi. Should we say that the winds that come after the rain is beneficial? What Vaksiv, the pasuk, when it speaks about the klolis, what does it say in the pasuk? Yitna Hashem matar artzacha. The Eibush is going to give you rain, and then avak va'afar. And what's going to happen is there's going to come a big wind after the rain. It's going to pick up all the sand, and everything is moist, and everything is going to become muddy. Everything is going to become full of sand. So when you have a wind after the rain, when it's moist, it's not good. So how can we say that the wind is good after the rain? That this is the wind after the rain, that's not good. So the Gemara answers like kashya. It depends. Ha the asa niche. You have a wind that comes, a calmer wind. So it's a calmer wind. It doesn't kick up the sand so much. And ha the asa razye. When you have a very strong wind, so then it's a wind that picks up all the sand, and then it's not beneficial. That's one pshat in the Gemara. There's a few different pshatim in the Gemara over here, but that's one pshat. How the Maila Avak, the Gemara explains, when you have a wind that picks up the sand, so then it's a problem. So then it's a curse. And how the Loi Maila Avak. And then you have a wind that's a calmer wind and it does not pick up the dust and the sand, so then it's not a problem. From Rabbi Yehuda said, Zike, the Basa Mitra, Kimitre, when you have a wind that comes after the rain, it's as beneficial as the rain itself. Even the basa mitre kemitre, and also the clouds that are here after the rain are also beneficial like the rain itself. And shimshe the basa mitre, and then eventually when it becomes sunny after the rain, it's also beneficial as well. It dries up the rain eventually, it's also beneficial. Ketrei mitri, and it's so beneficial, it's like it rained twice. So the Gemara says, Lamute mai. So then what is he excluding? So what's not beneficial? Everything is good. It sounds like that he's saying that specifically these conditions are beneficial. So what's not beneficial? So the Gemara says, Lamu'uti gili delelia. This comes to exclude when you have thunder at nighttime, that's not beneficial. And also, vishimshi de beini karchi. Sometimes you have, after it rains and it's still cloudy, but you have some of the shine of the sun that's breaking through the clouds, that's not beneficial. When it's like a little bit sunny and a little bit cloudy, that's not good. It's either fully cloudy or fully sunny, that's good after the rain. Rava said, Maili tilgi liture, the snow on the mountains is beneficial for the mountains, kechamisha mitri la'ara, like it rained 5 times on the ground. And the reason for this is, as Rashi explains, because what happens when it rains? When it rains in the mountains, so the rain flows straight down into the valleys. So the mountains don't have any benefit from this rain, basically, right? But when you have the snow, so the snow stays there and the snow gets absorbed there, so therefore it's very beneficial. And it's beneficial like 5 rains. Shanema kila sheleg yoima. You say for snow that hu oretz, that it's there for the earth, v'geshem, umatar, v'geshem, mitres uzay. So it says in the pasuk, geshem, matar, geshem, mitres, plural, so that's 5 times. It's as good as 5 rains.